My name's Adele Onyango, and welcome to another episode of Legally Clueless. No, seriously, I have no clue what I'm doing, but I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. Hey, welcome to this episode of Legally Clueless. This is what's coming up.
12 months are over and I do not feel any desire to go back to work. Luckily, I was working with, I'd been introduced to this career coach. So I had a meeting with her and she told me something very important. She's like, sit with that discomfort and uncertainty and hesitation to go back to work. It is telling you something. And when I reflected on it, I realized what it was telling me was, for me, work has always been high stress, highly competitive, very exhausting, burnout. Why would I want to go back to that?
That is part 2 of Kui's story, Dr. Kui Muraya. We're going to jump into it in just a bit. How are you doing? I always ask you this, and I ask you to let me know in one word in the comment section, wherever you're listening to this on, to let me know how you're doing. Describe it in one word. I really want to check in with you. And in case this is the first time you're listening to this podcast, welcome to the family. We've noticed quite a few of you are just discovering us. It is never too late to join the family. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And here we have a couple of shows that are really dedicated to African women. So on Mondays, we have this show that has different Africans come on and share stories of their lived experiences. On Wednesdays, 2 things happen. Our newsletter goes out where we unpack different topics around healing. And our midweek tease episode goes out where we do the exact same thing. On Thursdays, we have For Mannerless Women that goes out on our YouTube channel. If you want to stay up to date with the latest episode, if you don't mind being a week behind, you can catch it on our audio channels. So For Mannerless Women, the title is a bit self-explanatory, but it's where different African women convene and share their expertise and their inspiring life stories and show you that womanhood can look so diverse and you can create what womanhood looks like for you and feels like for you. Trust me, it's an awesome space. So welcome to the fam. Back to this episode. If you have not listened to part 1, please go to the previous episode so you do not float. If you did listen, a bit of a recap. In part 1, we heard about Dr. Kui's childhood and just her speaking about the powerful lineage of women storytellers that she comes from and how it was like for her to grow up as a child who was constantly made to feel different. And she talks about speaking up against injustice in school and getting punished for it and how that kind of made her over time slowly learn to silence her own voice. So really her entire story is about like remembering and reclaiming your voice. It never fully disappeared. So in part 2, that's exactly where we're at. Dr. Kui starts to reconnect with her voice again from moving abroad at a young age to just like navigating leadership, activism, burnout, that part. And if I was to wrap this part of her story in a few words, I would say it's really about what it means to choose yourself. 100 African stories on Legally Clueless. Stories from Africa.
So I finished KCSE, I had a gap year, and then I went to Australia. Stayed in Australia for about 8.5 or 9 years, thereabouts, so quite a long time. Studied there, started working there. I mean, I always worked part-time anyway, even when I was at university, but now finished studying and was working properly. Then after about 8.5 years, decided to come back home, and I've been back home since. It's been a while since I moved back home. It was good where it was good. It was challenging where it was challenging because, living abroad is challenging. And of course, when you go there, when you're like a 19, 20-year-old guy, what do you even know of life? Actually, my parents were very brave to let me go at that point, And I saw people who we went with there who really lost their way. Really, really lost their way. So yeah, just also to say to parents, this thing of sending your child abroad when they're young, it can be hit and miss, Lucky for me, it was not a miss. But yeah, Australia was good to me. I enjoyed it. The main reason I came back home was just because like I missed home. And also I was feeling like I'm missing out on so many things. People are getting married. People are having children. You're meeting the kids 3 years later. Things like that. So yeah, so I eventually decided to move back home. But I had a very typical kind of university life, You're studying, you're working part-time, you're partying also with friends, and there were challenges in terms of just settling in and the culture shock, but very typical. Highlights, I made very, very good friends in Australia. In fact, it breaks my heart that I did not maintain, we did not maintain contact. I guess back in those days also, by the time I was moving back home, no mobile phones were there, but there was no like this, my WhatsApp, na my FaceTime, na what. So I guess it was a bit harder to also maintain contact. So I had a very good community of people when I was in Australia. I was blessed. Very good people. I'm so grateful to them, forever indebted to them, even if we've not kept contact for the most part. They're people I will remember for the rest of my life. Lowlights, there was a year I really struggled. That was a year I would say actually I think experienced some level of like depressive symptoms, but it was just more, I can't tell you why, like not I can't tell you in the sense of I don't want to tell you. I can't say there was any one reason. I just think I was struggling to settle in, culture shock, far away from home, far away from anyone I knew. I was struggling with the course that I was doing. So I initially went there to study civil engineering. I did very well in my, what they used to call pre-university, did very well in pre-university, got into the civil engineering course, civil and structural engineering, did it for 2 years. Oh my God, I hated it. I hated it so much. Then I'm like, guy, now how do I even start telling my parents that this thing is not, it's not working? So I think like now all of that is and like I'm also I'm a person who takes my academics seriously. So like it's just not working. Thankfully again, my dad to the rescue, because when finally I told him, I didn't even have the courage to tell him. I asked one of the university counselors to call him and tell him. And he called me back and he was just like, your career is what you'll do for the rest of your life, and you need to be happy with it. So if this thing is not working, then change to whatever will work for you. Me, I'm like, what? By this time, fees imelipwa for like, I don't know what, everything. So anyway, I ended up changing from civil and structural engineering to a Bachelor of Arts, majoring in psychology and anthropology. I always say, I'm so grateful for that decision, because if I had not changed, I would never have gone as far as I have now in my academics, like all the way to the PhD level, which is basically the highest academic qualification you can get. If I had stuck with that initial course, I would just be a very miserable engineer doing my 8 to 5 or 9 to 5, probably with a drinking problem or something, But yeah, because of that switch and because of the support of my parents to make that switch, I really thrived. I really, really. And can I just say also that my dad was gracious enough to allow, quote unquote, for that change. Because I remember when I told him I want to go do engineering, he's an engineer himself, a civil engineer. And he said, are you sure? Are you really sure about that choice? Because I guess he could tell from my academic transcripts that I thrive more in the humanities than in the sciences. Me, I'm like, can't believe you, Dad. You don't have faith in me. I'm going to be one of the first female engineers in Kenya. Nini. So you see, my motivation is even to be the first female. It's not because I really like this thing. Yeah, but anyway, he was very gracious when I wanted to change. And I believe I made him proud. Since I think even he does not regret supporting that decision, because I have since then really thrived academically and professionally. Me and Mom, we are good. My mom and I, we are very similar. And so I think because we are very similar, there's only so much we can get along. In other words, our personalities are very similar. We're both very tough. We can be very hot-headed. We can be very opinionated. We can be very no-nonsense. Say it as it is. So we're in many ways, we are two peas in a pod. Look, I don't know if that's the right saying, though. like we're just similar. So because of that, then of course sometimes we will clash, right? But it's just a typical mother-daughter relationship, to be honest. Oh yeah, so I'm back in Kenya. So then I started working in Kenya for an organization that I worked for many, many years. Being back in Kenya was just like, working, started studying for my PhD as well. Also being sponsored by this organization that I was working for. They sponsored me through my entire PhD program, which was fantastic. So I did not pay a single cent for it. Since I moved back to Kenya, like work was great. I was thriving professionally. I think what might be interesting for me to talk about is kind of after that, because I worked in that space for a very long time, about 14, 15 years. During my working life, okay, not that I've stopped working, but during this, when I moved back to Australia, and then all those years when I was working and employed, this thing of speaking up against injustice, now it had come full force with all its twins. So even during that time, I was always the person who would speak up against injustice, particularly gender injustice, whether it was in the workplace, whether it was in society. Like, I am known, even my former colleagues, you just say Kui Muraya, or the gender person, like you get even that tag of the gender person. So, of course, sometimes it would get me into trouble, right? Not so much with my employer. My employer was very supportive, actually. But then, of course, sometimes if it's like something happening in the workplace and then like you have to call it out, then, of course, you're going to get into trouble with some people, right? So, so that thing came like full force, man. And now it was different when I was younger because I was also now starting to embrace it. I was owning it, and I'm like, I wasn't still at the level of awareness I am now, but I was embracing it a bit more. Although in the same way that I did when I was in Form 4, because now, just like I had been elected to be deputy school captain in Form 4, when I went to the workplace, again, on 2 different occasions, I was elected by the staff to be employee representative or like PhD students representative. And I'm just like, guys, you are killing me because I cannot be quiet about some of these things. And what that means is that sometimes you're butting heads with, the powers that be, right? So in my final year of my PhD, I just had to say, I'm resigning from this post of being the representative. You guys will just have to find someone else because Mimi, I just want to put my head down and finish this PhD thing. I'm tired of fighting battles. I'm tired of fighting for justice for people and everything. So for a period of time, I kind of but this time I chose in a very wise way to silence myself. It was very different to when I was in high school, because in high school I was silenced and in a very punitive way. In the last year of my PhD, I chose to silence myself. And it was through wisdom and being strategic, because I was like, I have a goal in mind. I know there are people within this system that support me, but still, I don't want to spend my energy fighting battles. I just want to get the work done. So when I was elected when I was in the working space, I was elected first time to be PhD students representative, and then post-PhD, I was elected to be what they used to call research fellows and postdoc representative. But both of these things, they're basically, it's like staff, right? It's like being a staff representative. For the most part, my experience was good, to be honest, because there were people at the senior-most levels who were very supportive of me, who would hear me when I raised concerns, and not hear me in a very kind of superficial, we're just ticking a box kind of thing. They would hear me, listen to me, ask for my opinion on things. If I raised an issue with them, like this is coming from the staff body or the student body, this thing is coming up, I did feel, for the most part, that they would take my concerns seriously. Having said that, there would sometimes be tricky situation where a staff member comes to you and they're raising a very sensitive issue regarding another staff member. And maybe that other staff member is your senior. Now you're like, okay, my job is to objectively represent the issue that this staff has brought to me. Now, I cannot go to that senior member because they are the problem. The complaint is about them. So how do I handle this? And how do I handle this in a way that the senior member will not now take it out on me? You know? But now that's where I think it really helps to have good topmost senior leadership, because I think that is what saved me. Otherwise, I think I'd have gotten into lots of problems. Because now what I would often have to do, in the few times there weren't that many, but in the times those situations came up, I would bypass this kind of mid-senior people and just take it to the very top. Book an appointment, go see the topmost people or person and be like, listen. In fact, what I would sometimes ask the staff member to do is, I'm like, can you put it in writing so that I can print it out but remove your name, anonymize your name. Then I'll take it to the topmost senior person and be like, look, this has come my way. This. You can see the complaint yourself. You can see the names that have been mentioned. I need a way forward. What do we do? And the few times that I found myself in that situation, the topmost senior leadership were very supportive of me. I felt they handled the issue adequately, to the extent where now when I go back to the concerned staff member and I'm like, this and this and this is what is being proposed. How do you feel about it? Are you okay with this? Do you want to take any further action beyond this? Like, even they were happy with the action that has been taken, or with whatever is being proposed. So I was lucky in that regard. I really was lucky in that regard. But I can see how if you don't have a supportive senior leadership, it can be very hard, especially with the very sensitive, topics or complaints that come about in the workplace. I can see how it can be very difficult. I was just lucky. And then, of course, by the time I finished my PhD, I'm also now getting into more senior level positions. So I can stand my ground better. I can represent the staff better, because I'm also now, I can hold my ground. I can even go to HR myself and be like, guys, it's not working, So in terms of competing with the HR, yes and no. Mostly no, because I wasn't the only staff representative. So there was a whole body of us who were representing various categories of staff, right? So each category of staff members had a representative. Then now we would all either individually take issues to the concerned people, or once a month, we used to meet for what they'll call an employee representatives meeting. So I wasn't like the only one doing that job. The only time it became a problem was there was once when one of the very senior directors asked me to do something very specific to kind of gender equity in the workplace. Again, because I was the gender person, I was the employee rep for my group of people, but then I was also the gender person. And then I think there had been some concerns raised. And so I remember he called me to his office and we had a very long conversation, and he asked me, he specifically directed me to do certain things because they wanted to just, come up with some strategies or solutions. So I had third party. No one told me, no HR person came and told me, but I heard that some people from the HR were not happy about that. Like, why is she doing this? Who does she think she is? Does she think she's the HR? But remember, sikujituma, I didn't just volunteer myself to do this thing. I was working under instruction from one of the top bosses. So me, I ignored it. I was like, take it up with the boss. It's not like I didn't give myself this role. You have a problem with what I'm doing? Take it up with the senior boss who directed me to do this thing, right? But again, in fairness to them, I had from a third party. So, and I'm always very cautious when I hear things from third parties. I take it with a pinch of salt, because I'm like, everyone has an agenda. People always have an agenda. So you don't know, this person is coming to tell you that, so and so said this and this about what you're doing. What is their agenda for telling you that thing? So I always, when someone says, so and so said this about you, I always take it with a pinch of salt, because again, it could be true, it could be false, right? So I had, but no one ever came and told me anything to my face. In fact, the contrary. I remember post-PhD, when I really did not want to take up the employee reps role, because I was fed up. I'm like, I'm tired of fighting battles, tired of being the Wangari Maathai of this, fighting for justice and everything. The head of HR actually strongly recommended me as like a rep. He's like, put Koi in that group. Unajua, I'll translate what I'm saying. She's like, unajua, Koi just says it as it is, eh? Koi is like no nonsense. She'll tell us as it is. I was so shocked when now the other HR person was like, so and so say they really want you in this group. They're highly recommending you. Please come and be part of the group. I'm like, what? That guy, the way I always give him a hard time in those meetings, why would he even want me? Like, he should be happy I'm not in that group, because I always give him such a hard time in those meetings. So I thought it was very evolved of him that he actually wanted a vocal person in that group. So that's what I'm saying. Also, when I had, I don't know, HR were not happy with what you're doing, I was like, okay, maybe not. I don't know. But I do know that at some point, the head of HR specifically requested that I be brought back to this employee rep group. He was like, we need voices like hers there. Shocking to me, because honestly, Aki, I feel sorry for him. I used to give him such a hard time about things. So more power to him. So I get the rep role. That was fine. Post PhD, it was fine. Honestly, it was fine. Fairly smooth sailing. At some point, I handed it over, but just because I was like, it's good to have turnover with these roles. Eh? You don't want to be like a Mugabe. You've stayed in that role for forever. So at some point, I was like, I think it's good for people to have fresh blood. So then I stepped down from the role. Someone else took over, carried on with my work. In the year 2021, 2022, I started thinking of taking a break from the working world. An intentional break, because I was so exhausted. It was many things. One, I was exhausted mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. I just felt I needed a break. I was also really in the phase of my life where, and now that I think about it, it was when I turned 40. So I was also really in the phase of my life where I was thinking about legacy. What is my legacy? What will be my legacy? I wanted to do work that felt a lot more impactful. I was really thinking of my legacy work. So I even talked to my senior boss, and I was like, when I'm done with this project that I'm leading, I'm going to take a break, blah, blah, blah. And I remember we laughed about it. He was like, I think you're just going through a midlife crisis. Ha, ha, ha. We laughed about it. And I was going to take a break in 2022. But then when I was in the process of finalizing my project so that I could take a break, I was headhunted by another organization to go into a more senior leadership role. So then I thought, okay, you know how they say a change is as good as a rest. So I thought, okay, maybe what I actually need is just a change. Maybe I've been in this other organization for so long. Maybe what I need is a change. Maybe it'll re-energize me. Maybe I'll get my spark back, my rejuvenation back. So when I finished my work with this one organization, I transitioned into the other organization, the one where now I had been headhunted. Yeah, that lasted I think at most 18 months. It was terrible. Honestly, it was so terrible. I don't even want to go into it. All I can say, it just did not work for me. I found the work environment to be very toxic. Some very kind of toxic colleagues. But also, in fairness, I was also just exhausted. It did not do for me what I thought it would have done for me. Because there were two things I was looking to get out of that new job. One, a change, which I thought would re-energize me. But two, the kind of work they were doing, I felt would help me to see the impact I was looking for. Because I was really looking to do work where I can say, this is my impact. I can see the impact from the work I'm doing. So when I got there, I realized, no, actually, this is not really what it has been sold to be, at least for me. And then also the work environment was toxic. And then, of course, at that point, I'm quite tired anyway. So, so I resigned from that job in December 2023. So then the last 2 years, all of December 2020, all of the year 2024 and all of the year 2025, I was basically on an intentional break from the working world. And that has been one of the best things I have ever done for myself. I'm so deeply grateful that I'm privileged enough to do that. Because, of course, there's some people, because of circumstances, they cannot take a break from working, right? In fairness, I also organized myself well financially, so I didn't just like take a break. I put some measures in place to make sure I will be able to survive, pay bills, not starve, not be a burden to anyone. I really didn't want to be a burden to anyone. I never have wanted that. Like, it's so hard for me to even ask for help. So I was like, I definitely don't want to be a burden to anyone. But so I did that, and it has been so good for my spirit, so good for my mental health, so good for my heart and my soul. The last 2 years, I've so deeply reconnected with my spirituality, with ancestral healing as well. Because of being able to take that break, I've been able to now start other projects that give me joy, like my podcast. I couldn't do that before. I was so busy, so busy with work, so tired mentally. I would not have the space to even be able to do anything like, my podcast, right? So now I was able to start having the space and the freedom and the bandwidth, the mental bandwidth and emotional bandwidth to do things that actually bring me joy. But most importantly, it gave me a chance to just pause and think, what would my legacy work look like? Because, before you can't even do that. You're just like busy, you're chasing grants, trying to meet deadlines, supervising people. Like you're just in this rat race of just trying to get the work done. You don't even have thinking space. I realized once I stopped working, I realized I actually did not have space to just even think. Because even if it's the weekend, your brain is so tired, your mind is so tired, you cannot even think. Hawezi fikiria, you cannot think, So just to be able to just have that space to think, to reconnect with myself, to reground myself, and just get to this point where I'm like, actually, what I am is a black lioness. I'm not a black sheep. I'm a black lioness. I have so many gifts to offer the world. I have inherited so many gifts that I have a responsibility to use wisely, to give back to society and to the world. So it's been amazing. So right now I'm in a space of, initially I'd said my break would be 1 year. 1 year Elisha, that 1 year ended and I'm like, oh my God, I am actually not ready to go back to work. And I was so stressed about it because I was like, what does this mean? Have I become lazy? Am I now a lazy person who does not want to work? Like, this is not me. I'm a go-getter. I'm career-driven. I'm, all these things. Then now I'm like, a whole 12 months have quished. 12 months are over and I do not feel any desire to go back to work. Luckily, I was working with, I'd been introduced to this career coach. So I had a meeting with her and she told me something very important. She's like, sit with that discomfort and uncertainty and hesitation to go back to work. It is telling you something. And when I reflected on it, I realized what it was telling me was, for me, work has always been high stress, highly competitive, very exhausting, burnout, just like crazy working. Why would I want to go back to that? Why would my body want to go back to that? Like, it did not, like work had stopped feeling joyful for me. And so it is why the idea of going back to work was just like, I can't. So then we went through a process with her where she was like, so now what you need to do is define for yourself, what would joyful working look like? What does that look like for you? And, it might look something very different for me and for you, for example, or for someone else. What is joyful? Maybe for someone else, joyful working is that crazy, crazy hustle of like stress, nini. Like maybe that's where they get their energy from. For me, at this point in my life, I'm just very clear that is not what joyful working is for me. So now I'm in a phase of trying to redefine for myself, what could joyful working look like for me? What is this work that can is impactful, contributes to my legacy, but I'm also able to maintain harmony and balance as I do it. I don't lose myself and my life as I'm doing this work, So yeah. So that's where I'm at right now. That's where the queen is at right now. This black queen, who is a black lioness who roars. That's where I'm at. Yeah, I think the only thing I want to add, and this will take us way back to, the first thing we were talking about, which is about growing up and family dynamics and all of that. I do think we need to start having serious conversations about, we talk about, say, workplace bullying. We talk about bullying in school. I do think we need to start having conversations about bullying within families. Because when I think of myself, especially my younger self, not even maybe child self, but like young adult self, yeah, I just really feel... Anyway, all this to say, I do think we need to start having conversations about bullying within the family, or like, maybe unhealthy family relationships, because I think they can be very harmful to people, particularly young people, young adults. And especially, as I said, if they don't have that one voice that's grounding them, it could go very, very wrong. But also, I really just want to speak to anyone out there who is different in whichever way. Different can look many things. You're a nonconformist, you think differently, you look different, you dress different, whatever different is. Please find your community, find those people or that one person that can ground you, because it can be a very lonely journey. And if you don't have grounding, you can make very bad decisions. But then for everyone else, it's just be kind. Be kind even to people who are different, who are non-conformist. The world needs all of us. The world needs people who conform, but also the world needs the rebels and the non-conformists. Those are the people who fought for our independence. Those like in Dedan Kimathi, you think they were conformist. Those were non-conformists. Those were rebels. All these people who fought multipartyism, non-conformist. The world needs all types of people. It needs the non-conformists, and it needs... But you can't also have all of us being non-conformists, because then that's pure chaos, right? So it needs people who are rebels and non-conformists and different. And then it also needs people who are like, okay, now you rebels, please, we have attained some peace. Can we just calm down now? All of us, let's calm down so we can have a bit of order in the world. You know what I mean?
Catch more African stories in the next episode of Legally Clueless. What an incredible story. I love it. I love it. I love it so much. I identified with so much. I told you in the last episode the bit about, honoring the women in her lineage when it comes to storytelling and her gifts. I connected with that. That really sat with me from last week into this week. I love when she talks about rest in this part too, because rest is revolutionary. Rest is fuel. And there are very many of us, especially women, especially African women, who spend so much of our lives trying to prove ourselves. You know what I mean? Surviving, performing, producing, movement, pushing through burnout, pushing through exhaustion. And that's not healthy, number one. And it actually wouldn't be productive if you're exhausted. You know this. You wouldn't be productive. You wouldn't be able to create. You wouldn't be able to live. And health-wise, you're going to be doing a disservice to your body. So I really loved hearing Dr. Kui speak about intentionally stepping away from work and just giving herself the space to reconnect with herself, reconnect with her, where are my words going? Reconnect with her spirituality, with her joy, her purpose. And I think we're always trying to find the next best version of ourselves from pushing harder. That doesn't work. I think you find the next best version of yourself when you pause, when you're silent. And in that silence, you get to hear yourself again. You know what I mean? I love this episode. I want to know what you connected with. So wherever it is you're listening to this on, after you tell me how you're doing, let me know what you connected with in Dr. Kui's story, both part 1 and part 2. If you feel moved to want to share your story on this particular show, in the show notes, there is a storyteller form. Fill it out and our correspondents are going to reach out to you. It's so wonderful to always start the week with you. Honestly, I've had a day and a half fighting with KPLC, who are our electricity provider here in Kenya. So you can imagine how hectic that's been for me. But this, talking to you, just like, brings me back to center. Before I go, do not forget to follow Dr. Kui Muraya on socials. So in the show notes, you'll get a link to her socials. You'll get a link to her podcast as well. But thank you so much for listening to this episode to the very end. I truly appreciate it, and I think that you have every single thing it takes to heal. That's it for this episode of Legally Clueless. You can share this podcast with your friends. You can keep it for yourself. I'm not judging. Just make sure you're here next week for the next episode.